Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give some feedback on NAM's speaking test. So let's get straight into it. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
My full name is Lee Duk right now. You can call me Nam.
Okay, thank you, Nam. So this part of the test isn't checked, but you already hear my name is Nam, so we don't get that S. Now, I know for some people in Southeast Asia, consonant clusters are just difficult. So Nam, where we get the Z, N next to each other, Nam. There are many people in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Cambodia that just drop that final consonant, like beach becomes beat, beat. My name is Nam. My name is Nam. So I can already see that there are going to be some problems with pronunciation, but this part of the test isn't evaluated. So let's jump in. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. What town or city do you live in?
Currently, I'm living in the heart of Taiwan City.
So already pronunciation feels mechanical, feels like candidate is reading from a script. That's how the pronunciation sounds. Heart of the city, nice vocab. Oh, sorry about that. What town or city do you live in?
Currently, I'm living in the heart of Taiwan City, which is located in the north.
Again, which is located, misses that S, and that does put a strain on the listener. When you miss that S, which it located, it takes the listener a little bit of time just to figure out what's being said.
Part of Vietnam is the bustling metropolis.
It's a bustling, so I don't like this type of stuff. It's a bustling metropolis. It doesn't feel like this language is emerging naturally out of the candidate. It feels like the candidate has sat and rehearsed and practiced giving this speech. It doesn't feel like a natural response to a question. It feels a lot like the candidate is really trying to activate as much vocab as possible.
With the great cultural heritage and
with great cultural heritage. So, it is good language, and certainly it's always difficult because as examiners in many different exams, we are taught that we should not award points for memorized scripts, or guessing or things like this. So, in some extreme cases, you have some candidates where you ask them, like, what do you do in your free time? And they say something like, I am from Caerphilly, which is known to be a wonderful city, and they're right off topic. So at least I can say for this candidate that the language is memorized and it does feel like he's reading from a script, but at least it is relevant language to the question.
blend of traditional and modern elements.
But modern elements again, it just feels like I'm not speaking to the human Nam here. I'm speaking to somebody that's just memorized a bunch of language to answer a question because he knows the question of what town or city are you from is going to come up. So I'm more interested as an examiner here, not in removing points or not in punishing the candidate. I'm just more interested in, well, let's ignore this and let's get to let's get to some more questions and let's see how he responds to more natural questions. Let's try to get him off script and see how he does. And do you like living in this place? So I still have to go through some of those questions.
Yes, I do, because it offers a wide range of range.
And you can see this, right? When the candidate forgets a word from his script, he breaks down. And that's one of many problems with memorizing scripts. It does terrible things for your pronunciation. It does terrible things for your fluency at times. What I mean by that is when you forget one word, if you're trying to memorize something and then trying to say every word out loud, when you forget one word, everything else can come crumbling down. And it seems like the candidate just forgot the memorized word.
Yes, I do, because it offers a wide range of entertainment options, such as lively markets,
Market sounds like Mackey's.
trendy cafes, and art galleries.
So yeah, it sounds, again, the language is good, and I have to say the grammatical accuracy is good. The vocab is relevant to the question. It just feels memorized, and it feels a little bit, the register feels not quite according to the test. It just feels a little bit like a magazine talking about like trying to sell or offering a review of this city. But maybe that's just the way the candidate speaks. So I'm not trying to judge too much here. I'm just more interested in breaking the script and getting to the real candidate. And how has this town or city changed in recent times?
Mm, I have seen so many trends in
Changes. I've seen so many changes.
my city. First, new shops and cafes have been renovated, enhancing the local economies and
Yeah, so this participle clause, nice. Many shops have been renovated, enhancing it's nice grammar. It just doesn't feel wholly appropriate for the test.
providing more options for the residents. On
I mean, it is a fair point.
top of that,
I don't know if renovation provides more options, actually. No, that doesn't make sense. So, if places have been renovated, that doesn't provide more options. It might provide like more pleasant options, but not more options.
some older building also
Older buildings, not older building, but older buildings.
have been renovated
And so you can see, cafes and restaurants have been renovated. Older buildings have been renovated. Just feels like, yeah, there's a lack of lexical resource there. Candidate has to rely on repeating constructions and language.
and it actually giving the neighbor a fresh and modern look.
Not the neighbor, but perhaps the neighborhood. But okay, fresh and modern look. I like it. And do you think you will continue living in this place in the future?
Definitely, yes. I plan to live here in the foreseeable future because I
Cool, the foreseeable future, nice.
find this place really
I would just say there's a problem with sentence stress there. The foreseeable future. Stress should be on future. In the foreseeable future, or for the foreseeable future. Not for the foreseeable future, but the foreseeable future. So that's a little thing in sentence stress.
convenient and it's actually flawless and serene for me.
Again, it's weird to hear like it's actually flawless and serene for me without going into so many details about it being flawless or what it is that makes it serene. Candidate just gives an adjective, but we're really looking for developments to demonstrate what we mean. So if we say it's serene, we want to link that to other ideas like it's very calm, it's very peaceful, the people don't make a lot of noise, there are not a lot of parties or nightclubs, you can hear the birds singing. So all of that stuff would back up the point that it's serene. It isn't enough to just throw adjectives out there, to learn an adjective and to just use it, right? That shows a lower level of fluency and vocab. If you say, oh, what do you think about your city? Oh, my city is a bustling metropolis and it's so fascinating and serene. That isn't a good answer. We're looking for, look, my city is a bustling metropolis, so it attracts a lot of tourists, because we have a lot of famous places and museums and especially galleries. So, when the tourists come to my city, they love to go to the National Gallery. I'm not sure how long it's been there, but, blah, 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 blah. Linking ideas, not just I know the word fascinating, I know the word serene, I know the word bustling metropolis, so I'm just going to throw it in. Just feels a little bit like that. And it's probably just the way the candidate has been taught, right? The candidate has probably been taught this. I spoke to him after the test and before the test, like all candidates, and he says, well, this is how we prepare for IELTS. We don't have speaking we don't have speaking in class. We listen to our teacher. Our teacher gives us information and we try to use that. Candidate also says he practices speaking in the mirror, and I think, speaking to another human, understanding how humans use English to communicate by not thinking about it and not studying it, but by doing it, I think that would help the candidate enormously because he does sound robotic and it does feel like this language of English while he's using it, he's answering the questions, he's certainly not like a super low candidate. It's just very clear that this isn't a person that is familiar with how English is used as an instrument. But okay, candidate is also quite young. Should keep that in mind. Let's move on now and talk about mobile phones. How often do you use your mobile phone?
To be honest, I often use my mobile phone on a daily basis,
Again, it's a bit tautological. I often use my phone on a daily basis. One or the other. I often use my phone, or I use my phone on a daily basis.
and I use is like
Candid is trying to use the word use, but obviously has problems with the z sound. We've seen this many times now.
daily basis, and I use is
You is so that z is coming in, but it's coming in the wrong place. I you is yeah, use it.
like 6 to 8 hours in order to
I like that. I use it like 6 to 8 hours. That feels a bit natural.
in order to do a mountain of assignments and
Again, a mountain of assignments. Again, it's just almost like the candidate has been told, like, don't use a lot of, use a mountain of. And so then when the candidate is speaking, the candidate thinks a lot of, a mountain of assignments, and it just feels forced.
playing video games.
And how old were you when you got your first phone? And it's clear that I think when it comes to part three or part two, when the candidate has to go off script, because you can kind of, you can rehearse and prepare relatively well for part one because it's quite personal. There's a lot of language that you can learn and activate in a number of, or in a mountain of different situations. That will be a lot more difficult with part three. And, well, I did this test, so I know that he's going to break down. But I think the reason for that is because he's so focused on, doing the IELTS test as like it is a technique and it is something that his teacher has taught him to do, rather than this is an English test that measures your ability to use English, rather than this is a test that demands that you use a mountain of or past perfect continuous or something.
As I remember vividly, I got my first phone when I
Again, as I remember vividly, again, it just feels like rehearsed. But it is, it is suitable. And I got my first phone. So again, that's together, first. Candidate just can't do two, or with certain consonants, the candidate just can't do two consonants together. And sometimes in English, of course, we have three consonants, consonants.
was 6, and these were a present that my
This were or this was?
father gave to me in my birthday party.
And you can kind of see with the candidate's facial reaction, there's a little bit of confusion. There's, of course, there are some nerves there, that's normal, but you never get the sense that this is like a full answer, which is coming to an end naturally. It's just like, how much do I remember? How much do I remember? And then dead stop. So it was, as I vividly remember, it was given to me on my 6th birthday, and it was a telephone present that my father gave to me at my birthday party. And then looks back at the examiner. And again, I don't want to be too critical here. Again, the candidate is using English, and I think the candidate has very good academic skills in general. I think the candidate will do very well at school because it's not easy to do this. It's really not easy to try to memorize and then quickly access and activate this language. So the candidate is showing amazing abilities to recall previously learned language, but it just doesn't feel natural. And which apps do you use most often?
Well, I usually use Facebook.
Again, I usually you Facebooks. So this s comes the s from the z comes after the next word. I usually you Facebooks. Should be use Facebook, but again, candidate knows that z should be there, but just can't put it at the end of use. Use.
Especially in social media, because I find social media really interesting and handy for me. I
I find social media hand. I don't know if social media can be handy. Maybe it can actually. And again, it's like the candidate has been told, don't use useful, use handy. Or if you use useful, also use handy. But I don't know, it's okay.
can check my friends' message and
Again, messages. Again, that jizz messages. Sorry, messages. Just yeah, candidate does have a limited phonological range.
I can actually see some news in there.
Now let's talk about birthdays. Do you like celebrating your birthday?
Definitely yes. I do like celebrating in my birthday because this is a great way for people to know about my birthday.
Yeah, it's strange. I like celebrating my birthday because it's a great way for people to know about my birthday. Maybe that makes sense. Have to think about it.
And I also feel like I'm on cloud nine whenever I celebrate
Candidate's trying to activate idiomatic language. I feel like I'm on cloud nine whenever I celebrate my birthday. It's like,
it.
yeah, and it's like, okay, it's cool, it's all right. I don't love it, but okay. And how do you think you'll celebrate your next birthday?
I think that in my next birthday, I will prepare a birthday cake.
Cool, I will prepare a birthday cake, activating some future time with the modal verb will.
And I will definitely invite my
Invite, again, missing that t, that final t, invite.
best friends and
Again, bet friends, because you can't say best, because when two consonants are together, candidate cannot do it.
my neighbors.
But neighbors is good. And when was the last time when you went to a birthday party?
As I remember, the last time that I went to a birthday party were when I was 9. It were a birthday
Is were instead of it was. Is were.
of my best friend, and it were really fun because
It was, not is were. It was.
we enjoy celebrating it.
So a few mistakes with this verb to be now. I think this was the third time where the candidate, doesn't demonstrates that he doesn't know how to use the verb to be in the past, which is very basic stuff. Okay, thank you. I think the cap for past simple should be used, should be controlled for like A2 plus students. They should miss it sometimes, but they should show an awareness of the ability to use it, especially the verb to be. Now, in this next, okay, so comments on part one. This will be the candidate's strongest part. Part two and part three, unfortunately, he breaks down a little bit. So, what can I say? The fluency is all right. He is developing his answers and he is showing at the moment a willingness to speak at length. His vocab is actually pretty good, despite the fact that I don't like that it's memorized. I think it just feels a little bit forced, but the vocab is relevant and, to describe your city as a bustling metropolis, I can't say that that's not appropriate. It is okay. I feel like sometimes the register is inappropriate, and so not having that awareness of style will cost him. So you won't get a 7 or above if you don't show an awareness of style. So vocab will probably be capped at maximum of 6. Pronunciation is a problem. The pronunciation does put a strain on the listener. Now, I'm lucky that I've spoken to many people around the world and I know the features of like Bangladeshi English and Chinese English and Vietnamese English and French English and American English, Slavic English. So it's good. West African English, great. It's good for me that I know this because I can hear that, oh, he's trying to say this, or when he says best friend, he's trying to say best friend and not best friend. But I have to think of it from what would the average English speaker think of this, and they would have difficulty. I think of most of my friends in the UK, most of them who are not linguists, who don't have such experience of speaking to people from East Asia, they would have real difficulty understanding some of the things that he's saying. And so I have to cap that. I can't say that it is easily, the candidate is it's fully intelligible, it's partially intelligible. Most people would understand the basic idea of what he's saying, but the also the I'll get to this later, but there's just no intonation there. There's a little bit, sentence stress is a little bit off, but intonation just feels very, very mechanical in the delivery. But let's get to part two. So things will break down, and I'm not going to give too much feedback. I don't want to be too harsh or too critical, but let's have a look at part two and part three. But I can probably already give my scores now. So the candidate must describe a TV show or series, right? TV show or series. You will have.
I have a watch.
Sorry. Now, please.
So today I'm going to describe about a TV show that I have a watch
Have watched maybe.
couple of years ago.
I watched a couple of years ago.
And this TV show called as Cartoon Network is about.
So Cartoon Network isn't a TV show, right? Cartoon Network is a TV channel. So, slightly off topic.
About animations and.
Cartoon Network is a show about animations. Well, no, it's a channel that shows cartoons or animated shows.
A mountain of genres that.
And again, we get this mountain of, which now makes me feel, yeah, it is rehearsed.
Children likes. It's about.
Sorry about that. I have so many messages. I just need to stop. Yeah, that's okay. Let's keep going.
It's about man with magical spells, and
Cartoon Network is a show with a mountain of genres and a man with magical spells. So coherence is, I am struggling with the coherence. I find it difficult to follow.
This really fascinating.
And again, I find it really fascinating. Okay, but anyone can throw adjectives around there. Explaining why you find it fascinating is a lot better than just saying that you find it fascinating.
And the protagonists were.
So you can see the candidate is so focused on activating language connected to TV shows. The protagonist, and it comes at the expense of everything, that he's just thinking, what words do we use when we talk about TV shows? And probably he learned like a bunch of vocab lists about transport, about TV, about education, about the environment. And now he's recalling those words and trying to activate them. Memorizing vocab really isn't the best way to learn. It is a way to learn. I've done a lot of memorization of vocab. There are some people that say never, ever, ever memorize as your approach to vocab. It works for some people. It certainly has worked for me in the past. But it's not an approach to, you can't just memorize a bunch of words and expect to activate them immediately in a test.
Really handsome, and I find it's really captivating.
Yeah, okay, handsome, fine, but captivating. Well, why captivating? Can you explain why it's captivating? Because it seems like you're just throwing around different words that mean interesting, but without going into detail about what you find interesting. So what will happen now is, doesn't happen very often, but if the candidate is under 1 minute, the examiner usually steps in and asks a prompt question to try to get the candidate to keep going. Are there any other main characters? And so that's my turn to think, okay, he's struggling. He hasn't got to the 1 minute mark yet. Let's give him a question, and hopefully that will help him just to keep going.
Yes, there are a lot of characters like the princess. She's really pretty, and I find she has a slender figure.
Again, I find she has a slender figure. So candidate has used find a couple of times. Like, I find him captivating, which is fine, but I find she has a slender figure. Not really appropriate. Find is what we use for like subjective things. I wouldn't say I find the sun hot. The sun is hot. It's not personally that I find it hot. And a slender figure is a slender figure, right? I don't think there's, I know there isn't a small element of subjectivity, but most people agree on what a slender figure is.
And she also helped the prince a lot.
She also helped. Did he say help or helped? I'm not quite sure.
Figure, and she also helped the
Just help. So this is an example where I know he's saying help or helped or helps, but help. Many people could. That would certainly put a strain on the average person.
prince a lot.
Okay, thank you. So candidate's turn is short here. He doesn't come close to the 2 minutes, and actually the first breakdown happened before the first minute. So that does affect fluency and coherence score. Candidate demonstrates that he can't really keep going, can't speak meaningfully about a topic for a long time. Probably because he's off script. Probably pronunciation is the same. Some of the vocab is decent, but without the ability to go into it into great detail. Let's move to part 3. So you've been talking about a TV show or a series that you like. Now let's talk about film and TV in general. What kind of TV shows or films are popular in your country?
To be honest, the kind of film that renowned in my city is romance because people
Kind of film that is what? Renowned?
romance. To be honest,
It's not really a to be honest type of question, is it?
the kind of film that renowned in my city
The kind of film that renowned, I guess kind of means is renowned, but he's using renowned as a synonym of popular, but here it's not an exact synonym, and these can't be interchanged this way.
is romance
Not that they can't, it's inappropriate.
because people like to enjoy to immerse themselves in
Again, just trying to find that people like to immerse themselves in, and you can hear how this language comes out. It isn't part of the candidate's emergent natural language flow. It is that people like to, what's the word, immerse themselves in a lot of different things. So those words really stand out.
the emotional depth, and
They want to immerse themselves in the emotional depth. Yeah, it just doesn't make, it's just incoherent.
they also want to know what love is.
What love is. They want to know what love is. What makes a good film or a TV show for you?
I think it's definitely some drama show because I find it's really fascinating.
Okay, you find it fascinating, but can you on a human level, can you just tell me what makes a show good? What makes a show fascinating for you?
Especially when people have or in conflict.
Okay, interesting. Why? What type of conflict are you talking about? Like physical conflict, like war films, or like athletic sporting conflict, like boxing films? Are you talking about? You mentioned drama. Drama is very broad. Do you mean conflict between like friends or family members, and conflicts over what? And maybe you can give an example of a movie or a movie director that makes films that are about that type of stuff. Or maybe yeah, but more detail. And does your country have any famous movie directors or actors or actresses?
To be honest,
Candace just using to be honest now to answer any question.
mm, in my country, there is
And again, I don't think the candidate is really thinking here, right? I don't want to say normal person, what a content focused person does here is they think, well, who are the famous directors or actors or actresses in my country? And I think the candidate is thinking, what words, what grammar or vocab could I use to explain who the famous directors are? And we don't want those language hesitations. I want you to think about really who are some famous actors, actresses, or directors. But it seems clear to me that you're thinking not about the content, not about the question and how you're going to answer it. You're just thinking about the specific bit of vocab that maybe is written down somewhere and now you're trying to remember it. At least that's what it seems to me.
And there's a famous character, and
We're not talking about characters, we're talking about actors, actresses, or directors, not characters.
he called as Suntung MTP. He is a versatile actor, and
He's a versatile actor. Again, so you can see when the candidate was thinking, that's what he was thinking. Okay, the word versatile, versatile actor, that's what I'm going to say.
he can actually act in most every kind of film.
Most every type of film. And that to me is the candidate's real level. Act in most every type of film where, you know, when the candidate, that's the language that naturally emerges from the candidate, which demonstrates a lack of knowledge or a lack of ability to use grammar correctly when he's off script. And how do you think TV shows or films might change in 30, 40, or 50 years?
I do think that it definitely changes in the future
Films, and not it definitely change, but it or they will definitely change. Future.
because many people don't have a time to watch film. They decided to
Watch films, not film.
short films or just like
Okay, gets the plural there, but misses that L because film. And that's difficult. There are so many Irish people that use the word film instead of film because that film, that part of the tongue that tops film, this alveolar ridge in your mouth, I won't show you film, kind of difficult. Yeah.
review instead of watching a full video.
Now let's move on then and talk about interesting characters. Do you think fictional characters are always more interesting than real life people?
Definitely yes, because fictional characters can be think in our own way, and and they tend to have a lot of magical
And this is what happens, right? When you forget that word magical ability, magical powers. Now, this is where an English user would paraphrase, right? This is where a confident, competent, band 6, or maybe even band 5.5 or higher, this is where they would recognize I don't know the word that I'm trying to use. I'm trying to use magical ability, magical power. And so instead of breaking down, because they have some magical, instead of freezing and breaking down, if you have enough linguistic resources, what you can do here, even if you're a low level, even if you don't have a lot of grammar vocab, if you have a lot of practice of speaking with people, you suddenly learn how to start paraphrasing. So they have a lot of magical, like Harry Potter, where he can like fly like an aeroplane, and normal people can't do this, but fictional people sometimes like they can do lots of like special things that normal people can't do, right? Nothing difficult in my language here, but it's a successful paraphrase. I don't know the exact word, I don't know the precise word, but I have those speaking skills that allow me to get my message across in a less precise way. And the candidate just doesn't have that extra level. He doesn't have the level that he can go to whereby if he forgets a word, he can drop and think, okay, I'll explain it to you using simple words. And yeah, he just breaks down. It's I feel terrible for the candidate. It's awful. It's an awful feeling when you're sitting there and you're nervous and your brain just goes blank and you just can't think of the word, and it's yeah. But this is a result. This is because you try to activate your vocab. This is because you're trying to activate memorized vocab. You haven't, I don't think you've learned how to communicate using English. I think you've just been taught that learning language is about remembering as many words as possible. And this is the result of that type of learning. unfortunately. And it's not the candidate's fault. The candidate is just doing what the candidate has been taught to do, and he's trying his best. And, the candidate is doing a very good job of, because it is so difficult to communicate when you've had this approach to learning a language. So I have absolutely nothing but respect for this candidate for attempting to do this. And I hope that this will be a sign for the candidate that, perhaps I should focus less on trying to learn vocab. Perhaps I should focus less on trying to activate vocab, and I should think about what it means to be an effective communicator. Do you think these magical abilities make them more interesting?
Definitely, yes,
Why?
because it not definitely is not appear in the real world.
Is not appear. They definitely don't appear. But again, still doesn't answer the question of why does that make them interesting? But why does it make them more interesting? And the candidate has no answer for it. Because when the candidate has to explain an idea, he can't. When the candidate is given a question that he can think, okay, this is connected to this vocab, I'll use this. But when you dig down, and that will happen in part 3, when you dig into an idea, you see that there is no idea there because the candidate isn't thinking about ideas. Candidate is only thinking about what language, what words he can use.
I think it's because there are so many colors, and it also
The candidate doesn't have ideas. The candidate did mention that this would be difficult for him in his first language, and that often comes as a result of being young. Older people certainly, I think to manage part 3, in most cases, you probably should be about 21, 22. I think it is difficult. People are different. I was a very immature 17-year-old. I was a very, very young 17-year-old. I would have had great difficulties answering such questions in my first language. So I fully understand the candidate's pain. Perhaps he's too young, or perhaps he's, just hasn't taken an interest in wider world global topics. But IELTS maintains that if you are a person that is ready to take higher education, you should have formed some opinions about these different topics that you have in part 3. Okay, let's move on and talk about historical characters. So I think I'm going to end it there because nothing is going to change, and I don't want to keep giving the same feedback over and over again. So I think I'm going to go into scores very quickly. Yeah, so fluency and coherence, I'm going to give a 5 for this. Part 1. Now maybe I have to drop it just a little. No, I'm going to give a 5. I'm going to give a 5 because I do think the candidate does at times demonstrate a willingness to speak at length. So in part 1, you try to speak at length. You use a nice range of cohesive devices. And remember, cohesive devices, not just those linking words, but also things like pronouns and articles and things like that are also cohesive devices. So you have a nice range of cohesive devices for sure. However, you break down regularly and often fail to recover. So, some people, they break down. And that's why I'm thinking about the 4, because there were a few cases where you just didn't recover from it. So I wouldn't be surprised if an examiner gave you 4 for fluency and coherence. I'm going to be generous and give 5. Lexical resource, I do think... Yeah, I'm gonna go with the 6. So you do activate a lot of memorized words, and many of these are suitable for the topic. However, you can't really go into detail, and it feels like the vocab you use doesn't emerge naturally. just doesn't feel like it's language that emerges from you. It feels like it's language that you're accessing from a different place. But lexical resource, I think 6, and I can be generous with that. Grammatical range and accuracy, I will give 5 for that. So again, you have variable control over very basic grammar. I would even say not even weak, but that you have weak control over very basic grammar. Verb to be, present simple, past simple, third person s in present simple. Sometimes you use present time to talk about the future, although you did use some future time stuff. But just think that accuracy, you don't need to learn new grammar. You don't need to learn B1, B2, C1 grammar. You just need to learn, again, A1, A2, maybe B1 grammar, because you're not using elementary grammar correctly. Yeah, pronunciation, I think I'll give 5 here, so it feels a little bit generous from me, but most words are intelligible. At times there is some appropriate sentence stress. However, your phonological range is limited. What do I mean by this? Well, specifically, you have enormous problems pronouncing so many different consonants. Consonants are the opposite or the alternative to vowels. The vowels in English, A, E, I, O, U, but sounds like I, that type of stuff. The problem, you have enormous problems with the consonants, the b, the k, the z, the ch, the t, the j, the zh. You just miss a lot of them. They just disappear randomly. This isn't, you're not the only person who does this. Many people in Southeast Asia speak in a similar way too. But this often puts a strain on the listener, I would say. Could you have 4 for pronunciation? Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if an examiner gave you 4 for fluency and 4 for pronunciation. Really wouldn't be surprised with that. But your vocab is good, but it just doesn't come naturally from you. So overall, this gives you a 5.5. But if in a real test, I wouldn't be surprised if you got 5.0. You could have 5.0. Maybe I'm a little bit generous here, but I think maybe enough for 5.5, lower end of upper intermediate. For me, the candidate really feels like a B1 user of English, not B2. So maybe 5.0 is more suitable for like the holistic mark, but maybe there's enough for 5.5. Who knows? Yeah, so again, some points to improve. My point would be forget about IELTS. Forget about IELTS and try to find a way to use English in a natural context. Many different natural contexts. You could find an online speaking club. You could play video games online and speak to people. Listening to English is good, but you want to be listening to the kind of English that should be used in a test. So normal, natural, conversational English. Yeah, but forget about IELTS for now. That would be my recommendation. Absolutely forget about IELTS. It's not doing your English any good. Learn to enjoy the language. Learn to think of the language not as something that you study at school, but something that helps you to communicate with the world or to enjoy we do live, unfortunately, in an English-dominated world, but that means there's a lot of stuff that you can enjoy in English. So you have to find a way for me to activate English in a natural context. And forget about trying to remember and recall memorized bits of language. It's just not helping you. Yeah, so again, absolutely nothing but respect for this candidate. Brave to try it. It can be very nerve-wracking. You can feel very nervous, especially when you forget words, especially if you're younger like this candidate is. I will say to the candidate, your English is very good. For a 17-year-old, you should be very proud of the progress that you've made. I think cognitively in your head, I think if you did a grammar test, you'd probably do very well in a grammar test. I think, English as an academic subject, I think you've learnt it very well. But English as a social instrument, you still have a lot of room for improvement there. So, yeah, enormous respect for your candidate. Thank you very much for taking part in this. And I hope, you pick up. I hope you learned something from this feedback video, and you can use it as some inspiration to get better. If in 12 months you want to do this again, I don't think you should do it in the next 12 months. But if in 1 year you have a chance to practice English in a natural setting, if you want to do this again, contact me. I will absolutely give you another test. But yeah. So I'll leave that there for now. I hope you enjoyed this practice speaking test. I think it's very instructive to show you why so often, I and other people say forget about memorized language, it won't help you. I think this is a really, really good example of that. But if you'd like to, if you're watching this video and thinking like, oh, I could do better than that, or my English is more natural than that, or my grammar is better than that, feel free to try. You can request a free practice IELTS speaking test with feedback in my Telegram channel. Don't be shy. And also I check IELTS writing. So if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, then again, you know where to do that. The Telegram channel is the place to request it. But I will have a lot more videos coming very soon. But for now, I will leave it there. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening and see you all soon. Bye-bye.